you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back, everyone. Today is a brand new episode to a brand new series. This is actually the first one in the series of How to Get Good, appropriately titled, of course, to keep up appearances. Now, basically, this is designed to help people understand the mechanics of the game. Some of the most basic stuff, some of the most advanced stuff, everything is going to be covered in separate videos along the series. But today is going to be focusing on light attacks and heavy attacks, their level of importance, how you apply them, how you can benefit from the different types, and how you can enhance them as well. Not just sets, but also certain champion points and stat bonuses and all that good stuff. The series is focused mostly around beginners or newer players to ESO, or maybe more casual players, but there are going to be some advanced tips in some of these videos that maybe even the most experienced players aren't familiar with. So we're going to start from the very beginning. Basically, when you first start the game, you are given the tools of a couple of skills and light and heavy attacks. They do explain these in a tutorial, but we'll go over them. There's a light attack, which is R2 on console or the left mouse click on PC. And there is a heavy attack, which is the same button, but you hold it instead. Now, the difference is the light attacks are normally quite high damage individually, but they can be fired off very, very fast. And they're free, of course. Heavy attacks take longer to wind up, but you do gain a benefit from them. Now, the difference is when you do a light attack, you just hit the target. That's it. They can crit or they can miss crit. If you do a heavy attack, you hit them, which can crit or non-crit, but you get resources back. You'll notice when I hit them with a full heavy attack then, I glow green. As you can see there, my whole body glows green. That means that I got stamina back. Now, if this is a magical weapon, instead of getting stamina back, you get magicka back. So it's very, very straightforward. These are direct attacks, by the way, but different types of weapons have different types of heavy attacks. All light attacks are direct. Now, the reason light attacks are so important is because you can only fire off light attacks so fast. I can't go any quicker than that, even if I try. And skills, I can't fire them any faster than this. Even if I want to, I can't get that any quicker. But what you can do is you can light attack, and while there is a cooldown between your light attack speed, you can apply a skill. And while those are cooldown between your skill application, you can put a light attack in, and vice versa, all the way through. So it's always light, skill, light, skill, light, skill. We're not going to get into animation cancelling in this video. That is relevant, but for the time being, what you need to know is the order. Always have a skill and a light after, then a skill after that, then a light after, and so on. Doesn't matter which order you do that in, whether you start with the light or you start with the skill, but you do one, then the other, one, then the other, one, then the other. That fills the gap. It doesn't leave you with a blank half a second or so doing nothing, and it'll actually improve your overall damage output if you are a DPS. Also, if you're not a DPS, if you're a tank or a healer, you can still also benefit from utilizing the light attacks. Although your damage will be significantly lower than a DPS character, you will still benefit from things like glyphs. So, on your weapons, you can actually hold glyphs or even poisons if you choose to, which will overwrite the glyph. And these can fire based on chance. These fire guaranteed, but they do have cooldowns on them. So, if you do successfully hit with a light attack, your glyph that you've chosen will fire. It will do damage or will gain back resources or whatever the glyph does. And then when it's ready to fire again, your light attack or your skills can reapply it. Now, we won't go over the application of all the different types of glyphs in this particular video, but this is very important to note. Your light attacks will fire these. So it's up to you, as far as your choices are concerned, which ones you choose, which would benefit your particular build. Above all, it's key to note that light attacks do make these work. Same goes for your backbar weapons as well. Just bear in mind, of course, don't have the duplicate ones because they won't stack. Now, here's where it's important about the different types of weapons that you choose and how their damage is affected. So the dual wield is very simple. You actually have single hits, one, then the other, one, then the other. Just left, right, left, right. But the heavy attack is actually 2 hits. You'll see 3 there. One of those is actually the glyph firing, which we just briefly went over. But the 2 big hits, they can crit or non-crit. You get resources back, and you actually get 2 hits out of it because you're holding 2 weapons. Also, in your passives, you do benefit as well, because when your target is low health, you will do more damage with your dual wield. light and heavy attacks do contribute to this. So bear that in mind. When it comes to two-handed weapons, this is slightly different. So we'll go with two-handed weapons. You've got swords, you've got maces, and you've got axes. These take up 2 slots. But these also do have light attacks, just the same, and a heavy attack. But the heavy attack is different. The heavy attack is a single hit, but it does still give resources back. However, due to passives, the two-hander has a different bonus. Instead of having 2 hits on one target, you do actually get AoE splash damage. So your light or your heavy attacks will damage up to 3 nearby enemies, doing 50% of the damage inflicted. So, here's a light attack, multiple targets got hit. Here's a heavy attack, multiple targets got hit, based on the damage that this target takes. So if you are gathering back resources, glowing green gets stamina back, you are going to hit multiple targets at the same time. And if you're not, if you're just weaving in skills, using skill hit, you will still do the AoE as well. It's very, very beneficial. Now, again, there are other variations of bonuses from lights and heavies depending on your weapon. So we have the bow, which is also very, very helpful with its own passives. Again, light attack there, heavy attack will be longer, it'll wind it up, and you'll get resources back. But the bow does benefit from a stacking bonus from light attacks and a range bonus. So if you're at range, you will do 12% more damage to targets for all of your bow skills, but your light and heavies are included. If you hit with a light attack or a heavy attack, you gain a 5% damage bonus for all of your bow skills for 5 seconds, and every single light or heavy that you do will increase this by a further 5%, stacking up to 5 times. So yes, you can have a 25% bonus, as long as you consistently keep up these lights and heavies within 5 seconds of each other. So what you're looking for is this same image here. If you look at Hawkeye there, it's got a little image beside it. Look at my buff timers at the bottom, and you'll see it there, just next to the sword at the back, or the end. And when that stacks up to 5, you can see that it's counting down. If that runs out, I'm going to lose a 25% bonus. If I keep it up, it stays with me forever. That's very important to know. The light attacks on the bow are not just beneficial for your overall DPS, for putting them in between skills, but it also improves your overall damage from your actual build if you are utilizing bow skills. Now, destruction stuff is very different because there are 3 different types. Now, what you need to do with an ice staff is pay attention to your passives, because an ice staff has a single target hit, just like the dual wield, the two-hander, and the bow has. And it also has a wind-up effect where you will get magic back instead of stamina, because this is a magical-based weapon. But be very careful here, because an ice staff benefits from a different bonus to the flame and the lightning. The ice staff will actually taunt the enemy if you have this passive. So this is very important. You get a damage shield, you get magic back, and you taunt the enemy. So if you're a DPS type, do not get this passive with an ice staff. If you're a tank or a healer that wants to taunt, then of course this can be beneficial. Now, as far as your other passives are concerned for this, of course, you do benefit from a spell penetration bonus of sorts, because you actually ignore the spell resistance of the target by 10% of it, in fact, with a light or a heavy attack or your skills. I'm not going to go over what all the passives do. I'm just going to go over the ones that benefit your light attack specifically, as well as other skills, of course. But not just the ice staff. You notice here the trifocus has different bonuses based on different weapon types. So again, although this is a destruction staff and they all come from the same skill line, they do different things. The flame staff has a single target hit, just like the ice staff. The heavy attack actually winds up and fires 2 fireballs instead of 1, which counts as 1 hit on the single target, but it doesn't taunt, of course. Now, how is the bonus different for this particular passive? Now, any heavy attack that you do will be 12% stronger. So your heavy attacks are pretty handy from the flame staff. Although they're slow, they do hit harder than the other staves. And also, as well as the penetration bonus, you do have something else. Equipping a flame staff increases your damage done with single target abilities by 8%. That includes the light and heavy of this particular weapon. So that does benefit you a lot. It's very, very nice indeed. Understand these passives, they're very, very important. Now, there is another benefit to the destruction staff skill line, and that is in the form of a lightning staff. Now, what you need to do for this is very, very simple. Your light attacks work exactly the same as every other light attack. You can't confuse that. Melee, range, doesn't matter. It's a direct hit. except obviously this is at range. This doesn't get the benefit of the increased 8% direct damage bonus that the Flame Staff gets. But what it does get is if you heavy attack with a Lightning Staff, the damage done to this target will be spread in area of effect. So if we look at the passive quickly again, we've got to try focus. The Flame Staff has an additional 12% increase to the heavy attack damage itself, whereas the Shock Staff does 100% of the damage dealt to nearby enemies. So instead of winding up a big heavy attack and then a single hit at the end, this happens. Every tick that does damage instead of a big wind up, and every tick of damage, all enemies around are taking splash damage. It's incredibly powerful for area of effect, but a completely different heavy attack nonetheless. Just remember and bear in mind, every single light attack is reasonable damage and can proc your glyphs between skills, so it's nice to use between every skill if you can to increase your overall damage output. But if you need resources back, heavy attack, and you will benefit from the heavy attack bonus of that weapon type, and you will get resources back at the same time. It's essential to understand the importance of a heavy attack return and its actual application in combat, regardless of what role you are playing. Now, some other things to notice about these particular bonuses. They can stack with your stats. So if you're a tank using a heavy attack like this, it's going to be relatively low. You can notice also that my damage output from this is quite low. That is because I'm spec'd into stamina. My character is a stamina build. So this contributes towards physical weapons, your dual wield, your bow, and your two-hander, and so does your weapon damage. So weapon damage and stamina are for physical weapons. Your lights and heavies will be scaled off of those combined. Don't just have one high and one low. Have them very well balanced if you can. Now, the Lightning Staff, the Flame Staff, and the Ice Staff benefits from Magicka and spell damage instead. So if I had higher spell damage and higher Magicka in here, that would be more beneficial. So it's about your build as to which one you choose to use. And yes, of course, you can hybrid, but that's a little tricky. So just remember, light attacks go between skills. Heavy attacks are used for your sustain to keep your Magicka bar up if it's a magic weapon, your stamina bar up if it's a physical weapon, and there are two more passives that are very, very important. We need to find a Resto Staff. Now, they do have lights and heavies as well. Let's find a Resto. Here we go. So I'll put this on. This, of course, is from the healing kind of skill line. Light attack, just like normal. Direct hit. But if you heavy attack, it channels like a Lightning Staff, but with no splash damage. However, you do benefit from Resto passives. You gain Major Mending for 3 seconds if you complete a fully charged heavy attack, which increases your healing done by 25%. And you also heal yourself or an ally for 31% of the damage inflicted by the final hit. So, of course, the pop at the end, much like the Lightning Staff, instead of just doing damage, will give you a benefit. Now, if it was a Lightning Staff, the pop would damage everything. If it's a Resto Staff, you then get the extra heal at the end, based on the damage done. Also, your fully charged heavy attacks restore 30% more Magicka. So, we're going to get rid of some resources. Then we're going to do a heavy attack with a physical weapon. And this will be how much we get back. We check combat metrics once this fight is over. It should show us. This is the previous one. The amount we got back from our heavy attack is 3,105. That's how much we got from our heavy. Now, if we do the same with the Magicka as well, so we're going to have to waste some resources here. That's a lot. That's a hell of a lot. Go into combat metrics again. This now gives us 4,769 back. Now, while we would normally get around the 3.1k, just based on our champion points as well, by the way, that is affecting it. This is much, much higher because it's a Resto Staff. So with a magical weapon, you'll get about 3k plus. A physical weapon, you'll get about 3k plus of the alternative stat. But because of the Resto, we get a much, much bigger bonus. Now, one more thing to bear in mind, of course. Any weapon that you use can also be scaled off of your type of armor. There is a heavy armor passive where you increase your Magicka or stamina return from your heavy attacks by 25%. Any weapon that I'm using will benefit that. including the resto staff. So hopefully that was a bit more helpful as far as lights and heavies are concerned. We do have some other things to go off of. Remember the stat base, your stamina and your weapon damage, or your magicka and your spell damage. They can still be heightened furthermore, because these are base abilities. They can crit or they cannot crit. They can fire off sets, so they can make things happen. So for example, if I have a set on which says you have 20% chance to do this effect if you do a light attack, 20% of the time that's going to happen. But some of them increase your light attack or heavy attack damage. This is very important to know. So if we go to Maelstrom weapons, for example, and we go to Destruction Staff, there is a bonus here. Your light and heavy attacks deal additional 1, 3, 4, 1 damage to enemies inside your wall of elements. There is a condition there, of course, but this increases your light and heavy attacks. Flat out. On top of your heavy attack damage that it already does. And this, because it's a flat value, boosting your base ability can crit. It's not this number that's critting. It's your overall outcome of your bonus in total. There are other sets that do this as well. So there is Undaunted Infiltrator, which will increase your light and heavy attack damage. That can also obviously give a whole number, and then that can crit or not crit. You've also got Elegant, which can increase your overall light attack or heavy attacks by 20%. Same applies again. It boosts the overall ability and then can crit or non-crit. You have Infallible Ether, which will do an increased heavy attack damage at the end, the final hit, so the full wind-up or the end pop of a lightning or a resto staff. You have many different sets in the game that can benefit this type of damage. There's also the Sergeant's Mail as well, which is a fully charged heavy attack bonus. There's lots and lots of stuff. So bear in mind, if you want to boost your lights and heavy attacks specifically, there are sets that can do it. There are stats that can increase it. And finally, of course, your champion points can increase them as well. Now, where is this important? Any melee attack, your light attacks or your heavy attacks from your two-hander, dual wield, or bow. So physical, not necessarily just melee. Any physical damage type will be enhanced by Mighty. They can also be enhanced by Piercing because you're actually going through the resistance of the target, depending on how much resistance they've got left. Precise Strikes will benefit it because if it crits, it will do more damage with this passive. Thaumaturge will not affect it. Master at Arms will, because they're all direct damage. Physical Weapons will, because it's physical damage. That's all your physical stuff out of the way. Now, of course, you can have Shatter and Blows as well. That's towards damage shields, but that's not what we're really going on. We're going on flat boost to your actual lights and heavies for physical weapon. Now, the magical weapons are exactly the same as far as the other side of the coin is concerned, if we're talking about Ice and Flame alone. So if we go Ice and Flame, you can have your crit damage bonus, so if you do crit, it's higher. You can have Elemental Expert, because it boosts all elements, so that works. And Spell Erosion, of course, because your Spell Pen will then give you more damage versus the target if you go through their resistances. But here it's slightly different. You can still benefit from Master at Arms, but instead of using Physical Weapons Expert, because it's not physical, you can use Staff Expert, which will boost your lights and heavies. Also, the Butcher passive for any weapon that you're using, if you're using lights and heavies, will be boosted if you have this passive. Now, there is one more thing that will boost your lights and heavy attacks, or in fact your heavy attacks, depending on your weapon type. And that is Thaumaturge, and that's only for two weapons. The Resto Staff and the Lightning Staff. Now, there is one more weapon set, and that's Sword and Board, One Hand and Shield. This does have a passive that benefits your light and heavies, but generally, most light and heavy attack damage from a Sword and Board is generally quite low, because most people use that for a tank, and tanks are normally not spec'd for damage, but this will boost it. As far as lights and heavies go as a tank, you can weave a light attacks in for additional damage, weapon procs, or ability procs, but a lot of the time you're blocking. So what you really want to pay attention to is your heavy attack to give you back that stamina between mechanics. So if you're getting hit, block. If you're not getting hit, give them a heavy attack. It's very important to note the reason to light and heavy. Again, just briefly, light attacks for damage, proccing glyphs, or making weapon sets or any set go off. Heavy attack to gain back resources, or to act as extra splash damage depending on your weapon. So, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully that wasn't too basic or maybe even too advanced for some. There are many, many things to go over in the game. This is just one episode in the entire series. We're going to go over lots and lots more stuff. Light attacks and heavy attacks are now explained. I will be going over in the next video in-depth animation cancelling. That's with weapons, with skills, with all manner of different scenarios where it counts. This is where it's really going to help. Just remember, every weapon is different, but every weapon does have the ability to do damage and give back sustain at the same time. What you use is up to you. So first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribed on YouTube, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website xynodegaming.com. I do live stream every single night on Twitch from 10 PM UK time onwards, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. And of course, there's a join button just below the video. If you hit that, you'll see all the nice shiny perks if you choose to be a member on YouTube. Once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.